Hi there, my name is Beverly, and I'm talking today about my service project that I did at Good Samaritan in Washington Park. I had to adjust my screen there for a second. I don't do this too often. This is Caden. He's going to help me make this video. Anyways, I donated my volunteer time at the Good Samaritan Ministries, and on my first day there, I worked with the children. I showed up about 2:30 and it was pouring down rain, and they didn't expect to get a whole lot of kids that day because they walk from the school to the site, which is about 2 or 3 blocks, and they didn't expect a whole lot of kids to be walking in the rain. But to my surprise, there was I'd say at least 10 children that ranged in age from 5 up until teenagers. And when they first get there, they all do a little prayer because I think it's ran by a church organization. And after prayer, then the kids got snacks, which they all seem to pretty much like. And the place where I donated my time does a lot of stuff, not just watching the children and helping them, but does a lot of work with the community in general. There's a lot of services also offered for adults, such as facilities to wash their clothing. They have a food pantry. They also have programs for adults to attend, and they also do church services. So there's more than just the helping of the children. And then the people that were helping the children, there was a social worker there, along with volunteers and 2 employees. There was a lady in the kitchen that did the cooking, and then there was the head woman in charge, I guess you'd call her. Her name was Joanne. And after the kids said prayer and had their snack, we sat down with them and helped them do their homework, which was interesting because a lot of their homework seemed to me, when I was that age, to be really simple. Like the 3rd graders and the 4th graders were learning how to tell time, and I remember doing that at a much younger age, and by 3rd or 4th grade I think we were already on to like division and everything. So I went ahead and I looked up statistics for the area, and when I was looking, I checked out the Wikipedia page for Washington Park, and the city is pretty much broke. They filed bankruptcy in 2009 because they couldn't pay their bills, and they owed over, I think it was $1 million in back bills. And the school system is kind of suffering because of that. Well, I mean, the economy's bad, so everybody's kind of struggling. But in places where they're impoverished, such as Washington Park, it's even harder for families and children and everything to get by. When I was helping the one little girl with her homework, it's just like the simplest thing. She asked me, she goes, "How many beds do you have in your house?" And I said, "I think we have like 4 beds, nothing different, nothing unusual, pretty average." And she looked at me and she was real happy, and she said, "Well, we just got a new bed." And I said, "Oh, really? Well, how many do you have now?" She said, 2. We have 2 beds. And I said, "Oh, that's nice. Do you have your own bed?" Just thinking maybe it was like her and her mom and dad. There were 10 people in her home. She had her and her 5 brothers and sisters, and her aunt and her cousins were all living together, and they had 2 beds in their house. So it makes you think about taking things for granted that you wouldn't even think are a big deal to you, are to people who aren't as well off. And then after we did homework, the social worker had some programs, and all the children split off into age groups, and we did like these little paper projects where they'd read a story, and then she would ask questions that related to the story. And if your team, because we were broken into age groups, if your team won, they just got something simple like a piece of candy or a sucker. But I mean, it was enough motivation to make them want to do it, and in return they were reading more. So it was kind of like a win-win, and they didn't even know it. And then after we did homework, the kids got to like hang around and play a little bit, and then they played a game called Sharks and Minnows, which I had never heard of. But basically we moved all the furniture out of the main area, and one person was the shark, and then all the other kids were the minnows. And the shark had to catch the minnows and eat them. And if you got eaten by the shark, you had to go sit down. And we did that until about 5 p.m. when it was time for everybody to go home. And the children, some of them walked, some of them got rides, and we cleaned up, shut things down, and that was it for my first day. And then I came back a week later on a Thursday for my second time, and I wanted to work with the kids again because I had such a good time the first time working with the kids. I didn't want to switch to the adults or anything. And on my second trip, it was more of a look of like the inside, because they also had, besides the food pantry, they have, I guess you would call it like housing supplies. They had like a good selection of clothing and furniture and things like that for people in need. And I got to go back there and kind of help sort things out, some of the clothes by size and everything. And then it had rained a whole bunch that week, so after I did that, I went ahead and I got a broom and a mop, and I cleaned and swept up the floors and put away the chairs and everything before the kids got there. And then the kids showed up, they had their snack, said a prayer, and after that we separated into groups, and I don't think anybody had homework, but we did another one of the little reading projects where we got separated into groups, and I got to lead my own group that time, and we got separated into a different room so that nobody could cheat, because we pretty much all got the same story, but since we were in groups and we worked on it together, I guess they didn't want to share answers. So we went back in a room, and we were the first group done, and we got all our questions right, so I must have been doing pretty good that day. Other than that, and then, oh, you okay there? We had a big burp just now, so. Other than that, we did the stuff that we were supposed to do. We did the homework, we did the project, and then it was pretty much time to just play. And I remember it was warm that day, so some of the kids went outside and played basketball. Some of them stayed inside and they just sat around and chatted. And I sat with the director and we discussed the summer project that was coming up. In the summer, they plan on doing like something each day so that the kids have something to do to keep them out of trouble. I think on Mondays they were having where they like work on a garden, and then another day the vegetables and stuff that they get from that garden, they make a soup and they invite the community to come in and eat the soup with them. And some days they had a prayer service, like a church service. So they had a lot of things for the week, for the summer, for children and adults to do. And overall, I'd say that, you know, my experience was positive. I haven't volunteered in a long, long time. The last time I volunteered, I was 21, I think, 20 or 21, and I volunteered for the Red Cross after a disaster. And I stayed in the office and pretty much just answered phones and kind of got things together. And before that, the only volunteer work I had was at an animal shelter. And I enjoyed that, but people are a lot different than animals. And I'd say overall, I was glad I got to do this because I almost forgot what it was like to do something for someone else without getting anything in return, because, you know, sometimes that's the best gift you can give is yourself and not get anything in return because you're doing it for someone else. So it was an enjoyable experience overall. They said I could bring the baby if I wanted to. He's 2 months old, and I decided, nah, I'd rather spend my attention on the other children because he's a lot of work, aren't you? Yeah, he's a lot of work. He keeps me busy. So overall, that was my experience at the Good Samaritan in Washington Park. And if I had a chance, I would probably do it over again because I enjoyed doing it. And it's a good program. They do a lot for the community, which that community needs. It's in really bad shape. So it's good to see that there's somebody doing something positive for others that need it. So thank you for watching my video. And that's it.